into the questions and answers session. This is going to be the final session for 30 minutes to talk about what I consider to be probably the most important, if not one of the most important topics, which is about sustainability. Are we just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, or are we trying to get the ship somewhere? And I'd like to believe we're trying to get the ship somewhere. So without further ado, we have a number of very, very interesting perspectives to share here in the panel. Is everybody ready? Almost ready? Okay. So today on the panel, some of the people here are already very familiar to you. Oh, I'm sorry, I should introduce myself. My name is Chizaoki. I'm from the GEF Secretariat. I basically lead our engagement in the MEAs, and I also manage the funds related to climate change adaptation and transparency. So we have a very interesting set of panelists. We're going to start with our staff member, Graciela, who will talk about the definition, what the science says, what the heck is sustainability. We're going to go into different perspectives on sustainability to be discussed by agency that's dealing with our food security integrated approach pilot. Then we want to hear from the perspectives of the smallholder farmers, which obviously is extremely important when you're talking about land-based actions and sustainable land management. Then we want to hear from the CSO perspective, and I suppose this is more to do with environmental and social sustainability of the interventions. And then it's also very important, how do you engage with the private sector? How do you sustain the private sector engagement? And how do we make sure there is financial and as well as economic sustainability? So we will also hear from Gautier from the LDN Fund on that one. And then after all this, we go to FIMO to wrap up on what the key messages of the sessions are. So this is jam-packed again. So without much ado, I'm going to give the floor to Graciela to set us on the course on what do we mean by definitions, what the science says on sustainability.
Yes, does it work? Yes. Works. Well, okay, again. Yes. Could I have, please, the slides? Yes. I think it's better this way. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Okay, my final intervention, what we mean by sustainability. In the frame of what the discussions have been and around what GEF is doing in terms of investment for projects, we define it as how to ensure that a project impacts endure beyond the implementation. And in a way is thinking about having these different projects that make part of the GEF program, and then we have a time zero where we begin with the investments. The idea is that once we have the GEF investment project completed, there will be some impacts that will be at the different levels of the capital, whether we speak about natural capital, financial, social, or human capital. Now, some of the impacts, if the outcomes are really related to natural capital, so we say that then the project is sustainable. It affects the natural resources of the program. If the project also has an impact on other types of capital, like could be the social, the human, or the financial capital, then we talk, and we consider the external drivers, then we talk about the concept of something that is durable, or ensuring that it's sustained beyond the investment or the lifetime of the project. So that's our concept of sustainability. We prefer to use perhaps the word more enduring or durable outcomes. And in terms of sustainability, what the meanings are, we have 4 different aspects that I just listed for the purpose of this discussion, and could be around outcomes being sustainable, the processes being sustainable, the resources that we use could be sustainable, and then one of the final aims that is related to risk management and resilience is the concept of having sustainable livelihoods. So I think with that one is my brief intervention about what we mean by sustainability and the difference with the concept of durability.
Thank you. Short and sweet and very to the point. And this resonates very well with, I think, what Gita was talking about earlier today, as well as our study related to the sustainability, which tends to look into the language Grazella uses natural, social, political capital. And also that resonates, mirrors very well with the financial, economic, environmental, social, political sustainability with more durable impacts as well as outcomes. So without much ado, I wanted to go to our, I'm looking at a wrong one, sorry. I want to go to Mr. Jonki Tenuv of IFAD, who will share some perspectives on what does sustainability really mean, how we're doing so far on the our GEF 6 program on food security. That was one of the our flagship integrated approach pilots. So should I pass on the microphone to you, sir?
Thank you so much. I will go in French. Effectivement, nous avons parlé ce matin de la question de la transformation des systèmes et je disais que avoir de l'impact à l'échelle ne voudrait pas dire forcément la durabilité. Et donc la durabilité a une autre dimension. Et si ce n'est pas aussi la quantité de l'investissement que nous faisons qui entraîne la durabilité. Et donc cela veut dire qu'il faut de l'innovation. Il faut aussi des approches qui impliquent tous les acteurs intervenants dans le programme. Et si nous prenons l'exemple de IIP Food Security, c'est un programme qui, dans sa conception, cherche à réconcilier l'intérêt donc d'augmenter la production agricole sur le continent africain et la question justement de la durabilité. Et c'est pour cela que le programme a adopté une approche qui cherche justement à engager tous les acteurs parce que pendant longtemps, nous avons cherché à appuyer les secteurs, à intégrer les dimensions durabilité dans leur processus, dans leur politique. Mais souvent, ces différents secteurs ont la difficulté à se mettre ensemble pour pouvoir mener des actions collectives. Et donc, à travers IIP Food Security, nous essayons justement de mettre tous ces acteurs-là sur la même table pour qu'ils puissent identifier des politiques, des stratégies permettant justement d'avoir des actions collectives et durables dans le temps. Et une fois que ce cadre institutionnel, politique et cet engagement de tous les acteurs à tous les niveaux a pris, et donc on peut identifier des actions facilement à mettre à l'échelle. Et une fois que les actions sont mises à l'échelle, il faut arriver aussi à mesurer les résultats pour pouvoir les utiliser et influencer les décisions politiques. Parce que pour assurer la durabilité, il faut que le politique soit convaincu que l'action qui est mise peut provoquer des transformations de son secteur. C'est pour cela l'évidence, la mesure et la question de l'évidence est aussi très importante en matière de la durabilité d'une action. Donc, pour IIP, nous avons pu mobiliser un consortium d'acteurs, presque tous les agences des Nations Unies, en fonction de leurs avantages comparatifs, apportent leur contribution sur des domaines spécifiques. Et si nous prenons par exemple le dialogue entre la science et la politique, et les politiques, l'UNEP sur les questions environnementales et la FAO sur les questions du secteur agricole ont des avantages comparatifs dans ce domaine. Donc, ils mutualisent donc ces avantages comparatifs pour apporter des transformations sur le terrain. Et si nous prenons le PNUD qui intervient sur la mise à l'échelle donc des chaînes de valeur, l'engagement du secteur privé, donc le PNUD, a des avantages comparatifs qui nous appuient. Nous avons d'autres partenaires comme Conservation International, l'Agence spatiale européenne, qui ont des avantages comparatifs en termes de mesures donc des services environnementaux et qui apportent cet appui-là. Donc, c'est vraiment une batterie donc d'acteurs qui appuient le programme pour pouvoir assurer cette durabilité-là dans le temps. Et donc, revenant justement aussi sur la question, sur ma conclusion, je voudrais tout simplement dire que avoir la durabilité ou bien atteindre la durabilité dans un programme ne veut pas forcément dire qu'il faut mettre beaucoup d'investissement dedans et qu'il faut aussi avoir des actions à l'échelle tout simplement, mais il faut une combinaison de tout cela. Donc il faut avoir des actions à l'échelle, il faut avoir des institutions fortes, il faut avoir des institutions pérennes pour pouvoir supporter cet engagement et il faut pouvoir documenter tout cela pour pouvoir engager des dialogues politiques avec les différents acteurs. Voilà ce que je pouvais dire.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Okay. Hello? This is not on. Is it on? Thank you. Thank you so much for that, and also highlighting that at the end of the day, on the longer term, you need to have all the stakeholders around the table, and you need to make sure their self-interest as well as their respective contributions are programmed from the beginning. Otherwise, you cannot have the continued buy-in for the sustained outcomes as well as sustained impact. So our next panelist is Mr. Ajay Jha, chairman of the Indian Farmers Collective. And I'm very, very curious as to how do you go about actually talking about the sustainability from the smallholder farmers, which are so many and in varied circumstances, and how do you make sure as a big stakeholder group that we can actually sustain the action as well as impact?
Thank you for this. I think there's unanimity in understanding that food systems are not sustainable for the people and for the planet, so there's no doubt on that. It's also true that farming is a very competitive business, which gets impacted by subsidies in the developed world, which artificially drive down prices of food till farmers don't get a true cost of growing food, which recognizes the environmental cost of degrading soils and degrading the planet. Farmers are not going to change practices. When you talk about the definition of sustainability, I think environmentally, what the layman will understand is that we do not destroy the earth more than what we have done already. But as far as farmers are concerned, small farmers are concerned, sustainability will mean economic sustainability for that season. If you go and tell the farmer, change your practices, after 5 seasons, your yields will come back and you will make more money, he's not going to change practices. So that's another point. And normally when you talk of sustainability, we look at averages across communities. I think the planning will be different if you looking at individual farmers' sustainability rather than the whole community, because those are sometimes maybe different from each other. The farmers will need a hand-holding to make any changes that will be productive and will mitigate climate change. And for that, the change is going to be very painful. So it's hopeful that the financing that comes will come for that change. One thing that I see not only in for Indian smallholder farmers, but even when you talk to farmers from other developing continents like Africa and other places, is that most of the funding that is going for infrastructure. And the focus is on infrastructure funding. So as a small farmer, we've been continuously saying that every project that GEF funds, World Bank funds, any project funding that goes for sustaining environment or sustaining smallholder farmers must have a 20 to 25% component for human resource deployment and development, reskilling of those who are supposed to help the farmers. Forget helping farmers, improve their knowledge. That is required. But even those who are supposed to help farmers improve their knowledge needs reskilling. They need to be constantly, their skills need to be upgraded. When we look at, the last point would be when you look at conversations that happen in the developed world, or when you have experts in large technology companies coming in, they talk about drones, they talk about satellites, they talk about smartphones. It's very good to talk about that. All these things can complement the extension worker on the farm. Now, if you were to say that we can supplement those, we do not spend money on human resources, but we will give technology and mobile phones, yes, it's required. But you still need somebody to handhold and talk and, have that emotional connect with the farmer, because the shift is very, very painful. And I think for the developed world, my message would be is that if you don't help smallholder farmers in Africa, in Asia, and maybe in South America and Latin America, we will keep migrating to Europe. We'll keep migrating to the US. You can build all your walls. You can build all your ships. You can put in everything. You got to help us to help yourselves. Don't think you're doing us a favor. I think you're doing yourself a favor. It's much cheaper to keep us where we are than have us in your homes and you build walls around yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we can take a next round of questions after everybody has a chance to speak. I think you had some provocative things to say, as well as a lot more interest to be explored further. Okay, so let's go to the next panelist. Now we're going to talk about sustainability from the perspective of CSOs. We have Mr. Noel Otto, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, who represents the DryNet network here. So tell us from the perspective of the civil society what we need to do.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciated the last speaker's input, the need for building human capacity. I want to give you a little transformed quote. I'm going to be talking to transformation and its role in sustainability. And this is transformed from what John Lennon famously quoted a while back. And my quote is this: transformation is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. And by that I mean to say that the world is transforming at a very rapid rate, and very frequently our behaviors are changing, our circumstances are changing in ways that we're quite reactive in dealing with. Professor Ray Eisen from Open University has had a lot of very pertinent thinking that he's published around what he calls projectification. And I want to put it to you that sustainability at the local level, if we're particularly talking of farmers and how they use the land, it's not about projects. And I'm sorry if that's uncomfortable for those of you whose work it is to generate and fund projects. But projects are merely a tool, and rather a faulty tool at that, for supporting processes at the local level that hopefully in the long term lead towards transformative change. At the moment, our global biophysical and social systems are transforming in ways that are certainly not comprehensively planned, or even broadly desired. I think many of us are being swept along by a tide. So in order to get our heads around this, I think Graciela's point earlier that we must apply systems thinking is very pertinent. And systems thinking can be both hard systems thinking, which is very much physical science informed, and also soft systems thinking, which is about us, the people who make the mess, using the hard systems at our disposal. And there's very valuable literature on these, and they're very practical to apply. But I think very often we don't do it, especially in the project context. So Karen O'Brien has pointed out that transformation often creates uncertainty, discomfort, and a sense of disequilibria, and potentially even anger and resistance if it's seen as a response to particular interests and agendas. So looking at India, the agricultural system has been transforming And I think the anger is something that we're all aware of. So very often people feel left behind by the transformations. So what matters in transformative processes? I think firstly, what we desire collectively within the context of this convention is values-driven social transformation towards greater equity, social justice, and more sustainable consumption. And on the other hand, we also require and desire science-informed, broadly supported, but locally owned and driven environmental transformation towards agricultural ecological systems that are more resilient. In the context of climate change, what I think we should no longer call climate change, we should call the current climate crisis. We need to be fully aware of the adaptive challenge of this climate crisis, and we need to challenge our own assumptions and beliefs, as uncomfortable as that might be at times. We need to examine our individual and our collective blind spots, our shadows, our projections. And we need to develop the capacity to do adaptive work by connecting with the core values of others. So it's only in the context of common values that we can really bring about change. And that's something that, as an academic in my agricultural extension days, was fundamental to my understanding of why extension is sometimes successful and sometimes it fails. It has to do with common values. So in this context, we all need to get a whole lot smarter and very fast too. And again, there's valuable literature on double loop and even triple loop learning, where in the learning process we examine those assumptions. We don't just simply move ahead, as we unfortunately all too often do in the project context, where projects are designed ahead of time and are usually rather inflexible in the way they have to be rolled out, and donors insist on predetermined outputs being achieved. Then finally, in the context of sustainable use of the land by agro-pastoral communities, I think we mustn't underestimate for one moment the importance of peer learning. And the Great Green Wall, we've seen the movie, we've seen the, forgive me saying this, but the propaganda. But I think we know it's based on a very broad level of impact in the Sahel in terms of revegetating parts of the Sahel in West Africa. And that has been driven to a large extent not by an institution, but it's been driven by farmers, learning from one another, sharing their knowledge, sharing their enthusiasm. And we did see that in the movie too. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. And just to reflect, in South Africa, I'm involved in a number of landscape initiatives. And when I first got involved in this convention 2 decades ago, we launched a pilot project with the World Bank and the Global Mechanism on peer-to-peer learning. And it pleases me to say that the landscape initiatives in South Africa that are contributing a lot to conservation of threatened ecosystems are very much kept alive and invigorated by peer-to-peer learning and creation in that way of communities of practice. So with those thoughts, I thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I think you're pointing to the importance of the, obviously the social capital, which Graciela talked about, but also the human capital. And I think we all take your point that this really isn't about projects and programs per se. Those are probably means to an end. It's more to do with what happens afterwards. Can we sustain? Can we keep going with the things we're trying to aim to achieve? So now we have Gautier Kweru, who's the CEO of the LDN Fund. So would love to hear your perspective on probably the financial and economic sustainability of actions and how you engage with the private sector in the long run.
Thank you, Cheese. Hi, everyone. I think speaking of sustainability from a private sector perspective is also a bit of a challenge, because private sector ranges from the smallholder into the very large corporation listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So there are different components, and it means also that private sector is not only about increasing dividends for the shareholders. Sometimes there is kind of the world is divided into two different categories, those really maximizing profit and those caring for the planet and the people. What is encouraging is that these days there is really a big change in the mindset of companies, entrepreneurs, shareholders, all the stakeholders of the private sector, understanding that companies are really a key change agent to meet also the SDGs, and I think there is strong awareness of that. Now we need to move to the next level and change this willingness into concrete action. And I think the message maybe I would like to convey is that if I speak in particular of the financial sector, is that there is really a strong commitment to contribute to SDGs, to the Paris Agreement, to ecosystem restoration objective. And I would say there are two important features that can be outlined or where further support can be needed is